Nice and cool today. We still struggling. The duck hunting has been very poor this year. But tonight we have some very special guests. Mayor Sherman Collette from the city of Henderson and Jody Mesh, who is also on the city council. And they bring to us great news about a project kind of really started with the Louisiana Crawfish Producers Association brainstorming the Chafly Basin Plan Program, which 2 years ago has been taken over by the Louisiana Coastal Restoration Protection Act. And the funding, potential funding, was raised substantially. Before that, they had about $1 million a year. Now the potential is around $8 million a year. And last year, they struggled to get projects and really didn't get any. And this year, they were kind of in the same boat. They had public hearings. At 3 public hearings, only 7 or 8 people attended. And again, they were with no projects. And so, kind of at the last minute, we found out about it in the crawfish meeting. And right away, we said, we need to go for Henderson. It's a very important part of the basin. For most people, Henderson is the basin. And it's a real area that was historical. I had fabulous fishing. And it's where I grew up fishing. And Sherman, a little younger than I am, but he also watched and observed the changes. So Sherman, share with us the things that happened out there that affected water quality fishing and a lot of other issues. Henderson is important also for flood control in that the water from Alexandria on down to Boyles Parish, Rapides Parish, Evangeline, or St. Landry potentially could drain and should drain most of a major part of it should drain into Henderson. But Henderson doesn't circulate the water very well, and it tends to fill up, so it doesn't work well for flood control either. So, Sherman, share with us your history. You live it every day. Sherman is a commercial fisherman, and really is in a position to understand the water quality problems in the system and the history of how we got where we are. Sherman?
Well, you know, I was pretty much raised in a boat with my father. I could barely walk, and I'd go fishing with him. So at that time, this is many, many years ago, and I saw the basin, Henderson Lake especially, where the entire lake was productive. Now, the best I can give the lake is maybe 2/3 that's productive at some parts of the year. It's stagnant water that we're dealing with. Fish can't spawn in that area, the eggs will die. And this project right here, it's really a dream come true for me. I've been thinking of it for many, many years. You know, something had to be done. And you know, this time coming out with this project right here, the people that's backing us up. And like what I'm telling the people, we're not changing the world here. We're not doing nothing like that. What we're doing is bringing it back as close as what it once was. And it's a project that it'll cost a few $1 million, but the productivity of it will be unimaginable. You will bring back the whole lake to life. You'll have ducks. You name it, it'll be better. Everything in the basin, it'll be better because of the quality of water. And this project was helping us, I think, a lot. This project is going to actually solve 2 problems with 1 project. Up north from Avoyelles, St. Landry, Avoyelles, Rapides, all the way to Shreveport, every year that flooding is getting worse. This project is going to actually help them. Everybody's on board. We talk to nobody that's against it. Because once you explain it like that and the people understand, we're trying to bring it back to what it once was. And I'll remember it at just as much at its best. And if we can do that, man, I'll be the proudest man on this earth. I never thought I was going to see it in my life. And we're moving forward. We actually have money.
First phase of the project has been approved.
Yep.
And it needs final approval from the legislature, but we met with several legislative representatives in Brobridge last week, and they're all totally on board, promised their support to make it happen.
What's so beneficial about the Henderson area, you know,
people traveling from the west, from the east on the I-10 corridor, you know, they drive over the beautiful Henderson Swamp that you see, but they don't have an idea that a lot of times of the year you got very poor water quality in that area. And it's important because it's so easy accessible. I mean, you have a public boat launch right in between I-10 at Butler Roads. You have the Butler Roads welcome area. You have a couple of boat launches going south from the Butler Roads public boat launch, and numerous boat launches along the levee, private and public, that people can access the Atchafalaya Basin and productive area right off the interstate. I mean, you can exit right off the interstate at Butler Road or Henderson, and in a matter of just a few minutes, you're in some beautiful, pristine areas that, you know, that could potentially be a lot more productive as far as fishery, birds, wading birds, the marine animals. I mean, there's so much stuff to see out in the Atchafalaya Basin. So it's going to be a real beneficial project that people are going to be able to take advantage of. Traveling across the area and wanting to experience the Atchafalaya Basin is going to be at their fingertips reach, you know, just right there. And we're really excited about it. And like the mayor was saying, it's going to potentially benefit and relieve people from flooding at times of the year when the water is low enough. You're going to be able to utilize this project to relieve waters potentially from outside the West Guide levee, potentially be able to let water go into the basin area in the Henderson area, and also let water out of the bottom through the control structure that we hope to see a new control structure, or for sure a modified structure along the Bar Canal along the West Guide levee. So you're gonna have two benefits. You're gonna be improving water quality for all of the different habitat out there, the fishery, the waterfowl, the migratory birds. I mean the marine animals and terrestrial animals also, because they need good water quality for drinking water and whatever. If you have polluted water, hypoxic water, that's not as healthy for the creatures that live out there as good fresh flowing water that's oxygenated from current. So we're going to benefit from we're going to relieve some flooding at times, and we're going to definitely improve our water quality. And when the water is going to be improved in this area later in the year, when that water is going to recede out of that area, it's going to go on down and flow on down to the Gulf. And you're going to have better water that's going to be getting into your Gulf, because it's not going to stay hypoxic and stagnant for months at a time like what happens now because of the hydrology of the area. So you're going to improve hydrology, and you're going to also relieve a lot of flooding. So it's a fantastic project.
And some of the problems that occurred, Sherman, share in your memory, what's some of the biggest changes that affected water quality in that system?
Well, a lot of it came from the oil field companies and the pipelines. And we're not against any of that. But, you know, everybody took it for granted the basin was going to stay alive forever. And it actually ruined a good part of our basin. And one thing about Henderson Lake, that we're very fortunate that, you know, a lot of people say, well, where y'all restock it? We don't really have to do that. The entire Atchafalaya Basin restocks Henderson Lake. Yes. You got to understand, when the waters are coming up from up north, like they're coming now, that water's ice cold. The fish want to get out of there. We have water going out from Henderson. It's a lot warmer. The fish will come in there to reproduce. So we're very fortunate that the Henderson Lake can restock itself from the entire Atchafalaya Basin.
Yeah. Every high water, you see that.
Oh, yes.
Right, and with this project, we hope that a management plan and a management protocol is going to be put in place to where now at times when the water is so low to where it doesn't overtop the control structure along the bar pit south of Butler Road, south of the Henderson Swamp area, the fish can't migrate through that gate structure unless it's open. So what we're hoping they're going to do is either have a different structure or modify the structure that's in place now to where you can periodically open it for a period of time, to where when your fish are at that gate and they can't migrate into the Henderson area or migrate out of the Henderson area, that gate will be open at times to where the fish can migrate throughout the 12 months out of the year. So they'll be able to back up in that area for feeding purposes, for spawning purposes, and retrieve the area when the water recedes and they can want to back out back into the river. So we're hoping to put a good management protocol or a management plan in place to accent the project that we're getting implemented and funded, you know.
Yeah, like last year when we had high water all over the country, all kinds of bark pits and little lakes and ponds all over the country get emptied. And they all up in the river, and they all end up coming down.
I think you mentioned that y'all caught some
We caught
smallmouth
smallmouth
bass.
bass.
Yeah, you know.
We caught 20 bass and we had 6 smallmouths.
Yeah. So those smallmouth bass, they migrated from far
Yeah,
north
they're from this
in the
way.
northern parts of the
In the
country.
sea.
So you never
Minnesota.
know how far these fish will migrate. And if you have dam structures that blocking their migration patterns, well, they can't migrate and do what they're genetically designed and programmed to do. So we're hoping to fix some of that was done over the last so many decades ago when the 54 Flood Control Act was enacted, and all of this these levees were put in, and these natural bayous were blocked off. We're hoping to get this project started, and we're hoping that it's going to lead to remedy some of that problem that has been caused. Yes, we protected ourselves from flooding, but we completely altered a magnificent ecosystem that we're all dependent upon for survival. You got to have a healthy ecosystem so that everybody can survive off of good health, good quality of water.
And a point to be considered is when that water quality returns, it almost produces instant results. When you grow crawfish in 2 months, you grow shrimp in 90 days.
Yeah.
And the shrimp come into that system. And the whole basin is part of the estuarine system. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't work if you got a dam in the way.
And let me
So the migration
Yeah.
is the fishery biologists, they can tell us when that is, when those gates need to be opened. So you're restocking, the food's coming in, and all the critters, what are the real, I guess, the canary in the mine about water quality is frogs. And, a frog can live anywhere. I mean, he can live in this room. But a tadpole can't. And when that tadpole, it's got to have good water quality to survive. If it's in dead water, they all die, so you lose your whole frog crop. So, super important
right.
that, that water quality returns. You produce frogs, which is food for everything, and shrimp, and crawfish, and bass. Being restocked, they're going to come, but they're not going to stay in dead water. I mean, they will either die or get out. And so this is going to be something, and we might share with the audience what are the steps that are being taken. We have the plan, essentially has been approved. We had a meeting with 28 people that first set this up. Every one of those people was totally on board to make this happen.
Right.
And we might share what the steps are and what your thoughts are about what it'll do for the economy of the area.
Yeah, but we put 4 priorities together on this phase 1 of this project that we put together. Mr. Howard worked on it, the mayor, myself, Mr. Dave Dixon, one of our parish councilmen, Mr. Chris Tozan, even the parish president, Mr. Chester Cedars, had some input in this, but we basically put the project together because we have a real good knowledge of the area. But phase 1 is removal of the Dixie Pipeline spall banks, which serves as a dam across by the midsection of this whole area. So we decided that would be priority 1 of this phase 1, because as soon as you're going to remove those spall banks, you're going to improve the flow of water across that floodplain, no matter what happens, whether it rises south to north, whether it comes in from north to south, whether the wind, the tide, whatever's going to have an effect on that water is going to be able to more efficiently flow across that floodplain when that damming effect of those spall banks is gone. So that's what we felt that should be priority 1. Priority 2 is do some cleaning out and some dredging of the area where the Grimmett Canal flows water south from the Catawba control structure up into this area, into the Henderson system. And we came up with an idea to kind of branch it off, dredge it out, go, like
Kind of forks.
direction, like at a fork direction to the east and to the west, to where that water will be able to communicate with all of those natural sloughs and bayous and tributaries and little lakes, and you're going to be able to flow that water more efficiently across the floodplain. Then you no longer have that damming effect at the Dixie Pipeline area. So that water is going to flow tremendously better across the whole system. Priority 3 is to address the gate system in the Bar Pit Canal along the West Guide Levee either modify it and make it a lot better than what it is, or replace it completely, with the idea to allow better fish migration through the whole annual, through your whole 12 months out of the year, and also to utilize it for flood relief at times when you can utilize it for flood relief. And then priority 4 is to put a control structure in the Butler Rose levee, where the levee dammed off Bayou Catawba and shut off communication from Bayou Catawba to the Atchafalaya River. Put a control structure in there and allow Bayou Catawba to have communication with the Atchafalaya River again, which would be unbelievable, because you could get fresh water at times from the Atchafalaya River flowing in from the north through this area at times, and to defeat the backup field, what happens now. And then you could also at lower water times open it up. You could open it up at low water times all the time and allow water to flow out of this system and into the Atchafalaya River, and potentially out through the West Guard levee into the Catawba area and into the Atchafalaya River. We believe that it's going to potentially be able to be utilized for all of those reasons. So
2 big things with the Catawba. The Catawba all filled in, so parts of it needs to be reconnected to the lakes south in Henderson. But then it's a major issue for flood control. You know, being able to dump that right into the Atchafalaya River straight across is super important for flood control. That affects Lafayette, and affects the whole Acadiana area. The whole Tetra is affected by Henderson's, you know, inability to pass the flood. This was really brought out in 2016. Henderson was low. It was right at 11 feet, and in 24 hours it went to 21, and it was the same level as the flood, so no more water could go down. And we know that from the farmers up in the Boils Parish. By the way, Boils and Rapides very much on board with this. But one farmer we interviewed said, I had 14.5 inches of rain in my rain gauge, and I was high and dry. 3 days later, I was 3 feet underwater. And he said, that just tells me that's not a blessed room for the water to go.
And let me also stress to the viewers, we're recommending that many water level gauge monitoring stations be put in place to monitor the level of water in the system that we're trying to impact, and also outside the levees that we can potentially relieve of flooding. We want to put water gauge level monitors in place so we can have it to where it's at the fingertips of whoever's going to manage the system, whether it be the Corps or whoever, but they'll be able to know, well, we could potentially allow so much water to go here in this area. Well, here we have too much water, we can't let any water go there. So we want that put in place so nobody is going to be at greater risk of flooding than they already are. In fact, it's going to improve their flooding potential and help them not to flood anymore by putting these systems in place. And we also want some water quality level monitoring stations in place so we can know how well we're impacting that water quality. You know, when water quality is poor, and then you have some mechanism in place like through this project, and you can allow fresh water to flow into and through this area, you'll be able to monitor how much you're impacting the water quality of that area. So all of that is going to do nothing but improve the whole system, there's no doubt about it.
One thing I'd like to say, a lot of people ask me questions about the gate system we have, the control structure. Well, what that was there, it was put there to actually build Interstate 10. To come with the barges coming in with the big sections of very, very heavy stuff. The water was real low, so they put it in, it holds at 9 feet. But what Jody was saying about letting the fish come in, every year, and right now is the time, it's pretty much the time. Every year when the water's coming out of the lake, it's warmer water. Now, when the river's low, which is not at this time, but when the river's low, it'll drop 3 or 4 feet down. They catch bait fish there. The bait fish are coming in there to spawn, shads. But you gotta understand, all the game fish that's there with them. I went many, many times there. They dip in shads. In one dip, they might catch 2 sac-a-lait in a dip that weighs 2 pounds a piece, and they're 4 inches thick with so much eggs in them. Wow. But you got to understand, they're trapped in the back of that. They can't come in. Yeah. And that's what they want to come in for. That's what the bait fish are coming in for, and the fish are following the bait fish to come in. But when you have a 4-foot drop, a 2-pound sac-a-lait, they won't climb it. Now, we don't have salmon here. A salmon could jump it easy, but we
Yeah.
don't. And that's the importance of the gate system. Actually make it work in a better way.
During the
Like-
spawning period, when the shrimp are coming in, when all those, the menhaden, the whole list of fish are coming in, and they come into the warmer, shallow waters, which Henderson is.
Yep.
And so it's super important that they have a path unrestricted to come into that system. And part of this is allowing the water to go down a lot more, which is super important for weed control. Y'all been battling the weeds, and
Hydrilla
and
and joint
nature
salvation.
does a wonderful thing. You know, when Henderson goes way down, it kills all the hydrilla, it kills the water hyacinths, and and it allows stuff to start sprouting and growing, and so this will more duplicate in a much better way than natural processes.
Right. And right now, phase one of the project, priority one of the project, I think we have $1 million that's funded to do priority one. So we're surprised and I mean, happily surprised that it was funded as quick as it was, because we put this thing together under the gun. We had a very short window of opportunity to put a project together before the deadline that we had that we were faced with. And I mean, everybody has just jumped all over this thing, and we're getting a lot of good positive support and feedback, and we think it's gonna lead to a lot bigger and better things for the area, and potentially it can be a format for other projects in the Atchafalaya Basin. It can be like a poster child. We can learn from what we're doing right here, and if it's very successful, then we can duplicate that in other areas of the Atchafalaya Basin. And it's situated in a perfect place, because you have the Butte-LaRose levee. It's confined by the Butte-LaRose levee, and it's confined by the West Guard levee, and you have a means of allowing water to come in from the north, and a means to allow it to flow out through the south. And we believe that it's a perfect opportunity and a perfect place to have a good project built.
And this goes all the way to Sinceport.
Yes.
So it goes right up the old river almost, and it's, I guess, 7 to 8 miles wide, maybe narrower in some places. But it has an impact on water quality on the whole west side. That water leaves Henderson, it goes through the Cocodrie Swamp, south of Butte-LaRose, then it ends up in the Benoit Swamp, and on down, and eventually into Atchafalaya Bay, where bad water has been a real problem in killing oysters and clams and having a big negative effect.
Contributing to the dead zone in the Gulf. I mean,
that's right. It absolutely, because that water's dropping real fast, and the same water that's killing crawfish and all is going out the bay. If it's windy during the windy period, the waves will regenerate the oxygen in the system. But often in July and August, we have these high pressure areas. It's hot, the water's hot, the oxygen level goes to zero, and there's no waves during these calm periods to restore oxygen. And that's what is a killer for oysters and clams, and affects a lot of other things, critters that live, that can't move, the worms and grubs and critters that are in the bottom, that are the beginning of the food chain of life. So this has effects, all the way down into the whole Marsh Island, Atchafalaya Bay region, even over towards Southwest Pass and all that. So we're excited about this happening. The area, the farm community north of Highway 190 has been plagued with flood problems. They have a community at 3 Mile Lake that they are really plagued with the issue of Henderson filling up and threatening their homes where they live. So the extra gate through Baikatava will be very beneficial to them. And so we've come nothing but positive response about this whole concept. And the Atchafalaya Basin is the South Yellowstone. And it was just an unbelievably productive area for fish and frogs and ducks and so forth, and the potential is there returning. It all turns on this issue of water quality. And of course, the neat thing is the water quality and flood control are kind of in the same package.
I know, like in Henderson, I gotta thank Donald Segura with the Atchafalaya Basin, the Ted Vermilion pumping station. Twice I called him. I'm in there almost at daylight, good many days of the month. One morning, my wife and I, we go. I get to the landing. They got millions of fish on the water, potentially a major fish kill. I called him. I said, Donald, we need a little bit of fresh water. He said, I'll talk to the board members. And that was the Friday. By Monday morning, we had fresh water coming in. I actually brought him and one of his committee members in my boat, and I went shore. I mean, the water the fish kill would have been millions and millions and millions of fish. He actually helped us prevent that. And that's twice that happened. And I was there seeing it with my own eyes. Millions of fish were saved because that Ted Vermilion was open, and at Catawba, the gates were open. And you go right in there. I could probably bring a blind person, and I could have him in my boat. He could tell me when we hit the fresh water, the good water. The smell, when it's rotten, it stinks the devil. You hit that fresh water, it's like fresh air. And it's that important. Quality of water in Henderson Lake is that important. You're saving millions and millions of pounds of fish from dying.
You're very involved in the economy of the Henderson area. What do you feel will happen if you really restore the fishing to what it was 50 years ago?
You know, a lot of people that fish the lake now, they can't imagine what it once was. You know, I was very, very young when I started fishing. I could just barely drive a boat. I was probably 12, 14 years old fishing on my own. And look, you could go ride any corner of that lake. It was alive. Now, if you don't stay dead center, you have nothing alive. I mean, on the sides, the frogs will die. I mean, they're going to get out of there. Everything's going to go to the fresh water.
Yeah.
Now, once that water starts receding, it pushes out probably 50% of the fish out the lake every year. Does it work? It doesn't worry me, because I know when it's time, they're coming back. And that's the best thing of Henderson Lake. It can refurbish itself if you put it the right water, and the fish will come back in there, spawn like it once was. People won't believe it. I know Toledo Bend is one of the best places in Louisiana, one of the best places in the country probably. But if we do that to Henderson Lake, acre for acre, fish for fish, Henderson Lake, it will match Toledo Bend.
Way outproduced. I would think it'd be way outproduced.
Because they come in from the river system, the entire Atchafalaya Basin. That's 900,000 acres of fish growing in the basin that can actually come into the lake to spawn. So it replenishes itself every year.
And then all of our neighboring communities are going to be able to piggyback and benefit from all of that business and that draw. You know, that wonderful draw to have the sports fishermen, the sightseers, the visitors. You know, and in Brobridge, Lafayette. I mean, all of the surrounding communities are going to benefit. You know, when you improve an area, then you know it's going to benefit the whole surrounding area also.
You're on the air. Can we help you?
Yeah, can you tell me, will this project be able to alleviate some of the flooding problems in the Lafayette area?
Definitely.
Absolutely. What happened in the 016 flood is Henderson filled up, and so the flood that was coming down from Alexandria, Rapides Parish, Avoyelles Parish, Evangeline Parish, Eastern Evangeline, North St. Landry, couldn't go into the basin. So we think our best guesstimates it raised water levels in Lafayette at least 1 to 2 feet. Now, the important part of that is that 73% of the homes, the 10,500 homes flooded in this whole Chesterfield system, 73% had less than a foot. So that alone, dropping the water 1 to 2 foot, had we had the things that we want to put in place, had that been in place in the August 16 flood, we don't think you'd probably prevented 7,000 to 8,000 homes from flooding. That's how important it is.
One flood relief period that this project is going to alleviate, one flood event, it'll overpay the cost of it, I mean, by 10, 20 times probably.
Yes, it's super important. At the same time, you're improving water quality. That affects birds. It affects, the duck populations. There's so many things that it impacts. The beauty of the area. Bad water has a negative effect on forestry, plant life. The whole ecosystem is hurt by dead water. And so this is a dramatic improvement. It'll affect virtually all the wildlife in that system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is so important. People understand and had everything that we planned to do been in place in August 16. You'd have lowered water in that system significantly.
And you know what? The people have to understand. We're not suggesting that at every potential flood event that this, the mechanism that's going to be put in place can potentially solve the flooding problem. But there's going to be a lot of times during the year when this area is low, the Atchafalaya River is low, and that happens normally on a regular basis. And you get a lot of rain on the outside of the West Guard levee, you're going to be able to let that water go into this area or into the Atchafalaya River and relieve all of those communities from flooding. It's going to happen. So, and like I said, if it happens one time, you're going to save millions and probably billions of dollars of flood damage, on homes and communities. So, no matter what the cost of it, we're going to reap the benefit of it more than one time over decades. There's no doubt about it.
Now, one thing that I fished the lake all my life, one thing what we saying, the good water passes down the center. Good proof of that? Eagles. There's eagles nesting in Henderson Lake now. And if you want to find them, you're going to find them in that stretch of good water. Ospreys, right now they probably have 75 to 100 ospreys nesting in the lake. And if you want to find them, you find them in that middle stretch. In the backwaters like that, you'll never find an osprey nest. No. Never.
That's right.
Because they can't feed. They can't get any food there.
Go where the food
That's
is.
exactly right. And that's one way to prove it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. And it's so exciting to see us come together. That the basin program, has been problematic. I mean, the early part of it, a lot of funds were spent building golf courses and doing things that really didn't impact the water quality in the whole basin at all. There was a project like Bayou Postilion, which was, it enhanced the owners of a little oil field that were well connected with state government, but it was a total waste of money in terms of water quality.
Now that project turned a beautiful, pristine, natural bayou into a canal. That's what that project did, the Bayou Postilion project. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and there was another one where the dredge across Grand Lake into Schwing Cove, and that was another disaster also. So the project, you can see why people didn't attend the public hearings, because there was so much negative press about the basin program. So that's what's exciting about it, that people see this project as being very worthy, very necessary, and where that program has to focus. Dealing with water quality, dealing with the whole ecosystem, restoring those natural processes. And we think that it will enjoy public support, that additional funding will come into that and allow the whole project to be completed. And it's super important that in all these things, we have a baseline, that the fisheries biologists go look at what we have now. The water quality experts go and do some measurements. Measure, zero oxygen is pretty easy to measure. I mean, we have equipment that does that. Every big bass boat has an oxygen monitor, and to go do those tests and then put the fixes in and see what happens. And that's the model to know scientifically that you have succeeded. You have improved the fisheries. You have improved the water quality. And, things like, look at the bird life. I remember we had a project, how youngsters are so interested in this, just to go sitting along the levee and identify and measure and quantify, the different birds that are out there. The same with the mammals. Identify the otter, the nutria, the the deer, whatever. Identify these species and what's happening with them, and then when the improvements are made, you can see whether those populations are enhanced, improved.
You know what my hope is, like I spoke earlier about, we want water level gauge monitors throughout the project area and throughout the adjacent communities. And this is what my hope is. The Corps of Engineers, they have water gauge monitors all throughout the river system, the Atchafalaya River system, the Mississippi River, all the way to the northern parts of the country. And this is the example of what I'd want them to implement on a local area also, and then you'd have a management plan to monitor that, and then you would know what to do according to what your gauge levels are. But right now, there's about a 16-foot difference between the Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya River. I can look at that on my phone and see that it's there. At the SimSport gauge, you compare it to Red River. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You on the air? Can we help you?
Yeah, Harold. Getting back a little bit to the flooding issue, I think one thing that it strikes me as very significant is that with regard to the 2016 flood, which is probably the worst flood disaster we've had in this area for 60 years, that was a time when the Atchafalaya Basin and the Atchafalaya River were low.
Right. And
if we would have had these control gates in place that you guys are advocating, we could have lowered the water in Catawba and thereby alleviating greatly the rush of uncontrolled water to the south, which flooded Lafayette Parish and flooded the city of Lafayette and St. Martin Parish and all these other places. So, I think it's really, I'm not trying to beat it to death, but and as Mr. Mesh was saying, the option to do that is not always there, but that was one time when it would have been.
Right.
That would have saved hundreds of millions of dollars in money and pain and suffering and all sorts of things that this area went through for, like you're saying, not nearly as the return on investment. He said 20 to 1. I would say it's more like maybe 500 to 1. The money that was lost rebuilding homes and stuff like that, compared to the cost of doing something like this, is just completely so disproportionate that it doesn't make any sense to do anything different. I mean, it's such a really good thing. So,
and
good luck to you guys. And
thank you so much for the call, Bob. And it's important the public be aware of this because it has enormous benefits at very, very low cost. When we look at some of the coastal restoration projects, you spend $38 million restoring 307 acres of marsh. That's almost $150,000 an acre. This project will cost nowhere near that and have enormous benefits that will endure for decades to come.
Right.
And so thank you so much for your support in all these issues, Ms. Bob.
And let me get back on my explanation.
Thank you.
I'm going to get back on my explanation that I was getting into because it's right in line with what the caller was talking about. What I was talking about, the Corps, they have water level measuring gauges in place, and they measure the water in cubic feet per second, but they can determine how much water is flowing through the system that they're monitoring, and they know and can kind of forecast and expect what's going to happen a week or 2, 3 weeks down the road. You know what I'm saying? Now, if more rainfall falls into the system, more snow melt starts happening, well then, it impacts that a little bit more to where sometimes they can't guess it very close. But they have all the mechanisms in place to gauge this all the way to the Great Lakes. Right now, Cairo River gauge in the Ohio River in the northern parts of the Mississippi River Valley has been up. It was rising. I think it's like at 30 somewhat feet right now, and it's fixing to stabilize and start falling. Well, they're looking at all of this to know how it's going to impact downstream. Baton Rouge, it was approaching 30 feet again at Baton Rouge in the Mississippi River. Butler Rose, Atchafalaya Butler Rose is a little over 13. It's going to flatline and stabilize at about 13 feet. Well, what I'm getting at is, if you compare SimSport to Red River Landing, there's about a 16-foot head between the Atchafalaya River and the Mississippi River. So Butler Rose can get as high as 22 to 23 feet on the Atchafalaya River gauge, and we were at 13. So the Corps knows that we have 10 feet of water that we could get before the community of Butler Rose floods. So what I'm getting at with all of that is it's a grander scale. I want these water gauge monitoring stations in place to where we can look at that at a local aspect of it, and then the Corps or whoever's going to be the committee or the group in charge of how we do with that water, we know, okay, we can allow so much water to go here, we can't allow any water to go here, we can allow so much to go here, and have the mechanisms in place to direct and divert that water where you need to relieve people from flooding in advance. Because the Corps is already doing it on a grander scale throughout the whole Mississippi River, Atchafalaya River, Ohio River, a tributary system. So what I want is this done on a local level to where we can just piggyback it on to what they're already doing. And it should have been in place. There's decades now it should have been in place. And with these projects such as what we're proposing, they can put this in place, and I guarantee it's going to allow them a much better scenario on how to control the water and how to relieve people from flooding in a local area.
I think what's critical in this whole thing is the Butler Rose Gate, whereby Catawba empties into the river just about 4 miles south on the river of Krotz Springs, Highway 190. So it kind of goes almost straight across, and super important for flood, but super important for water quality control. This was planned by the Corps when they put the rocks in to close the Wax Lake outlet. And they put the rocks in, they realigned Crookshank, and the third thing was to reestablish the Catawba flow. And Catawba drains all the water from Simport down.
Yep.
It's really not connected very well to the water coming through Catawba through the levee. That goes down to Grimmett. And so it's critical, and it's amazing that the Corps planned that and didn't do it, because that was 20 years ago or more. And this was a lot of money. I mean, putting rocks in was almost $300 million.
Right.
And then when they found out it was really bad, they had another $150 million to take it out. So, I mean, they spent $500 million on these projects,
Right.
And so it's exciting to see this happen. This is all locally generated, bringing the the Atchafalaya Basin program. And when the Corps found out, I think you met with the head of the Corps, Mr. Mark Wingate. Yes. He found out this was happening. He was super elated about it and excited that,
and he wanted to get involved.
The Corps needed to be involved, needed to be a part of it, because it resolves a lot of issues for them.
The mayor and I spoke to Mark Wingate with the Corps at the Tesh Vermillion annual inspection dinner that they had a couple of months ago, I guess,
Yep.
Mayor.
Yep.
Month and a half, couple of months ago. And when we told him what we were talking about proposing to CPRA for consideration to be funded, he was really excited about it, because all of the talk, about managing the water and, for flooding and relieving the flooding issues and stuff. So he was pretty excited about this project, and he felt it was something that could go into the toolbox, to add to the management of the whole system, so.
One thing I like to tell the people that I'm sitting down here tonight in complete amazement. What we're doing here, and you can see how we're excited about it, and everybody's excited about it. But I've never dealt with any kind of project, I was never part of any project that builds support up so fast like this one. We have no negativity whatsoever. People are calling me, we all really do this? It's unbelievable how fast. Jordan and I went to the gates at Catawba. We went out there with Chris Tozan with 2 boats. We go and meet 4 to 6 people. Well, we're driving up there, and I told Jordan, I said, look at the top of the levee. I imagine, I'm just guessing, there are 30 or 40 people blocking the whole top of the levee.
Right.
Well, we can't bring them all in our boat. So we brought the Corps and a couple other people. And but the support that quick. We had people from Shreveport on the levee waiting for us.
That's
We
right.
had, we had some of our federal delegation came on the boat trip with Chris. Chris brought his boat. I brought my boat, and yeah, we brought the people who we felt were key on trying to get this done, so that they could get an understanding of so to speak on the ground. What's on the ground? Actually, it's what's on the water. But we brought them out there so they could actually see what we were talking about, and it really enlightened them because they didn't have an idea until we showed them what we were talking about out in the boat, you know. So.
And it's important to mention that Congressman Higgins' staff is very involved.
Yeah.
They were in the boat with you
Yeah,
guys.
yes. Gregory Ellison.
Greg Ellison.
He's with Congressman
John.
Higgins.
And for those folks to get an understanding of what we're talking about, you get in a boat and you go and you come up against these big levees from this Dixie pipeline. You know, why the hell did that happen? How did it happen? You know, and because that's one of the major problems for flood and for water quality.
Right.
The little guy that came with us with the Corps in our boat,
Yeah.
when we brought him to the High Lines and we explained everything, all the tributaries, the sloughs and little bayous are stopped up at the north end.
Yep.
And I said, when you get back to your office, you put a pin on your phone. Right. You get to your computer and you Google Earth. Everything we telling you here there, you'll see is positively the truth. Now, if you put water east and west side here, and it flows through, it'll flush out the entire lake.
Yep.
That's what we have.
And I told him to look at the LiDAR, the LiDAR technology. It shows the elevation of the area. It was LiDAR was gonna show him all the low areas of the natural sloughs and little lakes and tributaries throughout that area. It was gonna show you your higher areas. It was gonna show you your areas that were actually low, but then elevated to show you where the plugs are. You know, so
Yep.
the Corps has all of that technology to where they went out and actually inspected it by boat, and then they can use Google Earth and use the LiDAR technology to really have an unbelievable understanding of what's going on, and I think that they do, you know. So we had some very good positive trips, you know, in the process of getting this done and hopefully making it happen.
And you know, Avoyles Parish is affected by this, Rapides Parish, and those folks are so excited to be a part of this solution. And that's why they come to the meetings. St. Landry Parish, all their people, Bill Fontenot, all those council people, every meeting we call, they're right there to support and help and lend their knowledge of the area because they're suffering. You know, I mean, their tourist center underwater. They almost closed the Walmart the big warehouse program,
Yep.
and so it's super important. You on the air? Can we help you?
Yes, early in the show, Mr. Collette mentioned the role of the oil companies in the depredation of the swamp. Will the project be addressing some of any spoil banks that are impeding the flow of the water through the system?
I'm sure it will be done. The most important thing, and I know you heard it earlier, the pipeline.
Priority 1 is going to address that on the Dixie pipeline. You know, we're going to, what priority 1 is going to do is going to eliminate the spoil banks that were left behind from the installation of the Dixie pipeline. And that's going to allow the water to flow much better, like from north to south, and impact everything south of the Dixie pipeline. It's going to improve it unbelievably. Now, later on, there are other areas within that system that also could potentially be impacted by removing some spoil banks, by also opening up some old natural bayous and sloughs, like in the southeastern area of the system, which is just north of the Butler Rose Canal. We believe that you could open up some natural sloughs that would allow that water, instead of staying pocketed and stagnant in that southeastern area of the basin, which gets stagnant for a long period of time, it would be able to flow through those old natural sloughs and bayous and out into the Butler Rose Canal and circulate on out down to where the pontoon bridge is, and then flow south along the Bar Canal along the West Guide Levee. So these are all future things that we're looking at hopefully being able to do to enhance what we're beginning to build on with the first priorities of this project. But priority 1 will address an issue that was left behind from the installation of a pipeline, yes. And we believe that it's going to make an immediate positive impact on the area.
But there's a lot of other insults. The interstate system, the Interstate 10 was a big problem. the railroad that was put in, you know, in the 19th century. You know, just it put another dam.
All of that
across the- all
elevated
these
land you
things,
see
all
along the
elevated
interstate
land is a dam across the system.
the railroad system, that was all unnatural spoil that was piled up through the construction, during the construction process of those highways of transportation. And they shouldn't have been piled up like they were. They should have been flattened out, and they should have been removed, and leave that floodplain as close to natural elevation as possible. When you elevate dirt in a long continuous area and direction, it's gonna dam off the flow of water in that area. There's no doubt about it. The water can't flow through it. It has to follow it and flow around it.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you so much for the call. So that's important, you know, the interstate left, you know, issues behind, mainly the big gate. I mean, that probably should never have been, when they finished with it, that should have been taken out. And, but, you know, the railroad, I mean, the pilings and all is still there. You know, you think, man, that's creosoted, that's a toxic
navigational
material.
hazard.
It's a navigational hazard, people hit it, you know. And so there's a long list of insults that this project will move in and cure.
Right.
Or you know, just when I guess the Butler Road was built, it ended up with spoil to close a bunch of bars down on that bottom.
Indeed. Right.
And so item by item, we'll be able to prioritize and see where you still got, you know, areas that are a problem. Look at what's causing the problem and fix it.
You see, we believe if it would be approved later on, it would be another a phase or another priority of a future project. We believe the parish can go in along the Butler Roads Canal and excavate these natural sloughs and bayous down to their historical depths to allow that water to flow historically the way it used to through the southeastern area and out into the Butler Roads Canal. Instead of staying pocketed and stagnant, it would flow through and out, improving water quality by having a fresh flowing water through that area. So
and that's the key, is to get this flow, because it's the dead water. I mean, you always have decaying vegetation, and that's sucking oxygen out of it. And it's also dropping material where you get a fluff bottom where fish eggs don't survive. So the flow through kind of cleans out the whole system, and I hope a plant will allow for a lot more up and down fluctuation and to restore the natural processes.
I think we're at a great starting point with what we've proposed here, and we're hoping for bigger and better things and a brighter future for our natural ecosystems, and also to protect us from flooding. You know, by utilizing what historically it was supposed to relieve us from flooding, but because we manipulated it so much, I think we kind of hurt us somewhat too. So we need to just kind of remedy some of those problem areas, I believe. And we're at a real good starting point in this area, I believe.
The main point we're trying to get to is we bring it to what it once was. That's the most important thing. Can we fix all the problems by doing that? No. But if we bring it to what it once was, I can promise y'all, people will be amazed at what's going to happen in Henderson Lake. Just like what Jody was saying, the Butler Roads Canal, the naturability, those canals, those bayous kept going.
Yep.
When they built the Butler Road, but they blocked them.
Right.
Now on the opposite side, the spoil banks is still there. You cut those spoil banks, let the natural old bayous and sloughs, let it do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do, is bring it back as close to what it once was that we can.
And when everything's in place, one time that you can have someone manage this water to relieve flooding in any one of the parishes or nearby communities, to where you can actually say, look, we utilize this project to relieve flooding in this area, unbelievable success.
It's as I can remember, you know, nobody bought crawfish back, you know, in the 40s and 50s. You just go to Henderson with a 25-foot menacing, and you put one pole in the bank, and somebody would walk out and make a little circle.
Anywhere along the levee.
Sacks of crawfish. You know.
Anywhere along the levee.
I remember when I was real young with
brim, you'd catch brim. Oh God! I mean, you know, my first fish was caught there, just with a cane pole. Go dig the worms. You know, 4 or 5 years old, and go watch that bobber go underwater and pull in those big brim. And you know,
along the levee system, we used to see maybe 10, 12, 15 families along the
yeah.
levee catching crawfish with the old 7-gallon buckets, boiling crawfish, all their kids with them.
Yeah.
Don't y'all think it's better that they're in the swamp? They're in the swamp doing this with their family than on the streets buying the drugs?
Yeah.
I think that's sad. I'd like to see it come back to what it once was, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's with the tension and the resources available, that can be, should be, has to be done. So I want to commend y'all for both, being very much a part of the solution, the Louisiana Crawfish Producers Association, the town of Henderson. Y'all hosted that first meeting. I think we had 28 people at that first meeting. And I remember the parish president, Chester Cetus, we only have 10 days to put this plan together. There's no way. And Mr. Dave Dixon said, hold on. If I can get the volunteers.
Yeah,
like
we owe a
you
great debt of
guys,
gratitude to
yeah.
Mr. Dave Dixon.
Sure
He did
do.
a tremendous job on putting this together.
So anyway, we kind of at the end of a time. So thank you all so much for being here.